You are sitting deep inside a drafty limestone cave, your breath blooming in the frozen air as a glacial wind sweeps fresh snow across the valley below. Your hands are weathered from 50 winters, your joints ache, and by every rule of the wild, your physical peak is decades behind you. You can no longer chase a reindeer. Your body can no longer carry a child. In a world where every heartbeat costs energy and every extra year demands food and protection, a creature that stops reproducing is usually cast aside by natural selection. Yet you are still here, and a small, exhausted band of people relies on you completely. Empty bowls sit by a dying hearth, the hunting party left before sunrise, and the valley has stayed silent for hours. You don't wait for them. You pick up a worn wooden digging stick, wrap your hides tight against your chest, and walk out alone. This isn't just your story. Women, on average, live another 30 or 40 years past their last child, nearly half of adulthood spent alive after reproduction has already ended. Almost no other mammal does this. For decades, scientists treated it as one of biology's stranger accidents. Lately, a smaller but growing number have started asking a different question. Not why you stopped having children, but why evolution bothered keeping you alive afterward. No one follows you into the white. They don't need to. You've walked this valley for 40 years and carry a map behind your eyes that no one younger has lived long enough to earn. You know which roots survive the deep frost. You know where clean water still hides beneath a dry riverbed. You remember the winter, 3 decades back, when the herds vanished from these plains entirely, and you remember what your people ate that year to survive it. The younger hunters panic when a trail goes cold because they've never seen an empty valley. You don't. Your sharpest tool was never a spear. It's an archive of stories, mistakes, and seasonal patterns, carried nowhere but behind your own eyes, which bright red berries stop an infection, and which ones will kill a child before sunset. Here's the strange part evolution has to answer for. It doesn't reward strength for its own sake, or memory for its own sake. It only rewards genes that make it into the next generation. A woman who risks one more pregnancy at 50 gambles everything on a single new life. A woman who stops and spends those same years keeping her existing grandchildren alive can end up leaving behind more descendants than the one who kept trying. That isn't a loophole. It's a strategy, and thousands of years from now, a researcher named Kristen Hawkes will give it a name, the grandmother hypothesis. You reach a frozen ridge and drive your stick into the earth. Decades of muscle memory doing work your arms alone couldn't manage anymore. Tubers aren't glamorous. No one paints them on cave walls. But when the hunting party comes home with nothing, which happens often, the ground doesn't fail you. It's packed with the calories your family needs to survive the night. A small child can't dig deep enough. A mother with an infant on her hip doesn't have the hours to spend on her knees in frozen soil. You do. And because you do, your daughter spends less time searching for food, your grandchildren get more reliable calories, and a nursing baby can be weaned sooner onto something solid, which means your daughter's body is free to carry another child sooner than it otherwise would be. This is close to exactly what Hawks will find when she travels to northern Tanzania to study the Hadza, one of the last communities on Earth still living by hunting and gathering. She'll expect the story to center on hunters. Instead, she'll notice the grandmothers quietly digging the same tubers you're digging now and find that their labor predicts how well the youngest children in camp are fed. She won't claim this proves grandmothers built human evolution single handedly. She's careful never to say that. What her fieldwork shows is narrower and still remarkable that a woman who has stopped having children can still be the reason her family's next generation survives. Near sunset, you walk back into camp as the hunters return empty handed, their faces hollow. You don't scold them. You build a fire the way you learned as a child, pull the shivering toddlers under your fur cloak, and keep them quiet while predators test the dark edge of the camp. When a young mother struggles through a hard birth, your hands are the ones that matter, because you've watched dozens of births and recognized trouble before anyone else does. You don't consult a book, you consult the wrinkles on your own skin. You take the young hunter aside, hand him a piece of worked flint, and describe a valley he's never seen, the one where the bison shelter when the worst blizzards come. Generations from now, someone will open a church ledger in a country that doesn't exist yet and trace births and deaths across centuries, and they'll find a version of this same pattern. Children survive more often when their mother's mother is still alive nearby. Not always. In some families, it barely matters. On the father's side, the effect sometimes reverses, and no one is entirely sure why. Culture bends the numbers in every direction. But underneath the noise, the same shape keeps reappearing: older women again and again, making families more resilient, not through strength, but by absorbing the everyday risks of raising a child. You are not the only creature doing this. In an ocean you'll never see, female killer whales live decades past their last calf, and when salmon disappear in a hard year, the pods led by the oldest females survive. It better not because they swim faster, but because they remember feeding grounds from a famine the younger whales never lived through. Memory becomes a kind of shelter, not just for the one who holds it, for everyone standing close enough to use it. Long after you're gone, people will still be arguing about how much you actually mattered, and that argument won't mean the idea is weak, only that nothing in evolution ever has one clean cause. Your grandchildren will need someone for over a decade before they can fend for themselves, far longer than almost any other animal. That kind of dependence can't rest on one mother alone. It needs a circle: fathers, older siblings, aunts, uncles, the woman too fires over who isn't even blood. Some researchers will argue this cooperative circle, not grandmothers specifically, is the real engine behind human childhood, that you were never the whole answer, only one part of it. Others will look at how long it takes to become truly good at anything in your world: 20 years to hunt well, 10 more to work stone properly, another 20 to read the seasons the way you do, and argue that long life evolved because expertise takes decades to build and even longer to pass on. A third group will look at your body and argue something colder: that another pregnancy at your age had simply become too dangerous for you and for the child, and that stopping was survival math, not sacrifice. And just when researchers think they understand how rare a life like yours is, nature will surprise them again. In 2023, in a forest in Uganda, scientists studying wild chimpanzees will find that some older females live well past their fertile years too, not nearly as long as you will, but long enough to unsettle a theory that had stood for decades. It won't disprove anything about your story. It will just be one more reminder that the truth rarely arrives as one tidy explanation. Most researchers, in the end, won't crown a single winner. They'll place you alongside the fathers, the hunters, the ones who taught, the ones who simply showed up small advantages stacked on top of each other for 100,000 years. Maybe that's the real strangeness of your species. Not that one person kept everyone alive, that everyone did a little for each other. The council gathers around the fire as the storm outside reaches its worst. There are no written records here, no laws carved anywhere, only the shared understanding that a human family doesn't survive alone. Every lesson you pass down tonight becomes a shortcut that spares the next generation from paying for the same mistake twice. Your species wasn't going to win this world through the fastest runner or the sharpest spear. It was going to win through the communities that figured out how to move information forward through time, out loud, on purpose, faster than any single body could pass it through blood. That's why children spend years just learning instead of surviving on instinct alone. Why stories get told at the fire instead of silence. Why language became one of the sharpest tools your species ever built. Sharper, in the end, than any spear, because a lesson one person remembers becomes a shortcut for everyone born after them. Small improvements accumulate this way: a better trap, a safer camp, a warning about a plant that looks harmless and isn't. Repeated for thousands of generations, tiny improvements become a civilization. As the children drift off listening to the rhythm of your voice, you're not simply watching them. You're guarding information. Nobody else in the camp carries the names of places no one visits anymore. The mistake that must never happen twice. In a world with no books, you are the book. No fossil will ever record that you taught someone where to find water. Memory doesn't fossilize. Neither does the story you told tonight. That's part of why none of this will ever be fully settled. Some of what shapes a species leaves no trace at all, only its effects. The size of the human brain, the strange length of childhood, the long tail of a human life, the habit of learning from people you aren't even related to. Walk through any museum of human history, and you'll find spears, arrowheads, axes, the bones of mammoths and bison. You'll learn about migrations, hunters, the inventions that changed the world. You will almost never find the old woman who sat beside the fire. She didn't invent the spear. She probably never led the hunt. No cave painting carries her name, and no fossil can tell us the stories she remembered. History is good at preserving objects. It's much worse at preserving the people whose greatest contribution wasn't something they built, but someone they kept alive. It would be a stretch to say the science proves grandmothers built civilization single handedly. It doesn't. And no honest researcher claims it does. But the evidence that does exist across ethnography, historical demography, and even the ocean keeps pointing at the same quiet fact. Experience has value, not just for the person who holds it, but for everyone standing close enough to use it. That may be part of why your species became one of the few where life doesn't simply end when reproduction does, and why thousands of years later, people will still be trying to work out exactly how much they owe to a woman who never appears in any record at all. You have no way of knowing any of this as you kneel in the frozen dirt tonight, digging with a worn stick, showing a child exactly where to look. You aren't trying to change history. You're only trying to get your family through one more winter. But somewhere, buried inside nearly every family tree alive today, there's a woman who did exactly what you're doing now. Never famous, never recorded, her name gone within a generation or two. Her legacy was never a monument. It was everyone who came after her.